Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us early this morning on a Wednesday. My name's Thursday, Friday Eve. My name's Alexis Gothic. I'm with the Technology Council of Central PA. Appreciate you carving time out this morning to join us for our today's tech session. Before we jump into things, a couple little housekeeping details. I do want to let everybody know that today's session is being recorded, so we'll post that following today's session so that you can refer back to it, share it as you see fit. It'll be posted on our website, and I will provide that link via a follow-up email for today's session as well. That will contain direct contact information for both of our facilitators. So if you're moving through today's session and are percolating some questions that may not be fully formed by the time that we wrap up, that is okay. You will get a follow-up email from me after the session with the recording and with contact information. So please don't feel pressured to try to put the pieces together if you're not ready before the end of this short session this morning. One more piece of housekeeping information, and that is giving a shout out to our investor that is either present with us already or will be joining us at some point in time during today's call, Harrisburg University of Science and Technology. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you represent HU for being a part of today's session and for your support of the Technology Council of Central PA, you are the reason that we can continue to do great and wonderful programs like these. I think that's all the words that I have so far this morning, at least for a couple of minutes anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to JB and David. Folks, take us away whenever you're ready.
Awesome. Thank you, Alexis. Hello, everyone. My name is JB Campanella, and I'm an enterprise account executive here at Nexthink. And with me is one of our top SCs, David Reis, as he will be your tour guide for the demonstration. Here at Nexthink, we're a leading digital employee experience platform. In organizations today, there is a multitude of interactions happening all over. Employees are interacting with their devices, applications, networks, you name it. All this traffic that is being created, as we know, causes disruptions for the organization's employees, which is where tickets get created. Then IT is asked in fixing, troubleshooting any disruption the users are having from the tickets being created. Very reactive. With Nexthink, that changes drastically. The platform provides IT enterprise-wide visibility across the entire estate for every endpoint. We help IT see issues instantly before employees even file a ticket. Furthermore, provide fixes to those IT disruptions without waiting for a human to intervene, which leads to preventing recurring issues from coming back by using insights and benchmarks to tell IT what to address. We enable IT to move from being reactive to proactive to autonomous. David?
Hey, thanks, JB. Yeah, and we're going to be getting into the product demo as well here and about how Nexthink goes through and does the things that JB was just referring to. And what it involves is installing a collector or an agent on the device. It's going to really get a lot of information about how that device is performing, things that are related to the experience of the user that's using them. So for instance, it's going to know about how much CPU and memory that user is taking up. It's going to know all the applications that they're running and what system resources those applications use, when they crash, when they freeze. What version do they have? How does that compare with other users? So we get all of that information in there, and that's what's able to be used to understand what's their experience and what should we do about that experience to make it better. But obviously with a collector, there's always going to be a concern, or rather with an agent, there's always a concern about the performance. And we tested our agent very extensively on a very broad footprint of millions of endpoints. And the metrics that we have are very lightweight in terms of CPU, memory, and network traffic. So that's something that's always a concern about installing the agents out there. But that's really an important component as well, is we're trying to improve that experience, not to degrade it further and force another compromise. And so that's a big part of our philosophy in terms of what we do there. And when we talk to our customers, what they're really trying to accomplish with something like Nexthink, or with DEX in general, if you're not all that familiar with what DEX is and how that how that can impact your organization, most organizations are operating from a reactive framework, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. The ITSM framework is fundamentally reactive in nature. But it does have more sophisticated processes like problem management that we look to grow on and do more. But that's part of the journey as well. But the way that we're thinking about that journey is a little bit different. It's being, okay, you need to be reactive because people are always going to submit tickets, but we want to do that better. We don't want to make submitting a ticket to be a huge burden. So we have things to make that process better, more efficient, more likely for first call resolution. We also do things for helping people be more proactive. How do you get out of things before they become a ticket? Hey, you know it's happened. You know this user's had a crash. We want to be able to get out ahead of this before they even call the help desk. And then to go even a step further, how do we get out ahead of that before it even happens? How do we keep the devices, your PCs, your Macs, in a good, healthy state, making sure that everything is working the way that we need them to work? And that's a big part about preventing those issues from even happening in the first place, to ultimately being strategic. What kind of assets should we own? What kind of allocation should we give? What software should we own? Designing a desktop estate from the top down in a way that maybe is not typically done. We often think of desktop estates as being very discrete. You're going to give one thing to that person that they need, but being able to really think about it strategically. How do we create the best experience for our users? That's really what we're thinking about when it comes to DEX, and that's the core philosophy that we have at Nexthink. And what we're going to be doing as part of the product demo is walking you through these states, but we're going to start really from a strategic perspective, understanding how we get the data, what it means, and how to interpret it. And then we'll talk about how to use it from a more reactive perspective, which is where most of our customers start. And we want to show you how also we use, from a reactive perspective, our agentic AI to move towards zero tickets. So taking that concept, yeah, they're still going to need to react, but does it need to be a human that reacts to it? And what can you really expect out of an agentic AI? And we see that there is a shift in there from some people are concerned that agentic AI won't be able to handle this to we expect it to be everything. And the reality is it's somewhere in between there, but we're finding that there's a tremendous amount that can be done with this one. And then if time permitting, I know we're on a short time frame, we'll talk about some of the more proactive things that we can do as well. But that should give us a pretty good sense for what we're going to go through in there. So with that, I wanted to switch over into our product demo in here. And when we talk about digital experience, one of the most common things is, how do we measure that? And that's what we've done in here, because I had mentioned before that we're collecting a lot of information. Every application that's running, the system resources it's taking up, when we crash, when we freeze, every web page that gets loaded and how long that takes to load. Those are all things that impact the experience of the employee, the user. So what we want to do is we want to be able to take all those different conditions that exist and then present them in a way that is legible and usable for someone like yourself, someone like an admin who's going to then process that information strategically to think, what should we do about this? So for instance, if I was to look at a score of 60 out of 100, that tells me that we really do have some areas for improvement. But what does that really mean? Well, that gets into significance is looking at the components of that score. So what is causing that score to be an issue in my environment for my organization? Does it have something to do with the device itself, the hardware? Does it have something to do with the applications that are running on that device? Does it have something to do with things like Teams or Zoom? So we look at all of these subcomponents to help you understand where are the issues happening and how evenly are these issues spread across my organization. So if it's very concentrated among a small subset of my users, I might want to focus just on those users first. And we could see that it'll tell us, for my most frustrated users, where should we really try to focus on their experience? And so, for instance, with this one, I could learn that one of the biggest things that they're having a problem with is SAP. I'm not going to go through the full troubleshooting steps of how to address that right now, but this is really where we're gearing towards, is understanding that we've got an issue and that we also do have utilities to help understand, for instance, why the page loads might be so high. But there's a lot of things that we could do with this one as well. And I'm going to show you how we could use this for a variety of different purposes. But before I jump into that, I also wanted to show you some other components in there, because this is really what this score is based off of, is a benchmark. And that benchmark is based off of a number of different submetrics, as I'd mentioned, things like the disk queue length, which is an indicator If that disk queue length rises, that means that people are going to have to wait for something. So things like queues, things like swap size, swap rate, they sound very technical, but keeping these types of metrics in order is something that will have a positive impact on their experience. And there are concrete steps that you can take there. Things like just rebooting a device or closing browser tabs or closing certain applications can improve that performance. Making sure that you don't have certain add-ons and plugins that are there. So keeping a device in good working order is one of the biggest indicators of whether they'll have these types of problems going forward in here. But what you'll be able to see is, how do you stack up with other organizations like yourself? How is your memory? How is your CPU? Is your devices being provisioned the way that you want them to be provisioned? Do you have sufficient resources for what people need in here? And that's really what we're looking at with these kinds of metrics, to see where you're doing better and where you might be doing a little bit worse than some of your counterparts in here. And then what we can do with that information, and just to kind of jump into that quickly in here, and I'm not going to go through a full dialogue about how we address that, but let's say we wanted to try to address that issue that we've had with SAP in here, and I wanted to drill into that. One of the things that will happen when we look at this is Nexthink will automatically make recommendations to you based off of that data. And so we have a very extensive LLM or AI model that's interpreting this data. So on these various screens that you'll come to where you see an issue, you don't have to interpret that data yourself. Nexthink will help you interpret that data in a couple of different ways. One of them is by providing these different tips throughout our product, telling you that what we see in the data is an issue with a specific page that they're attempting to go to with SAP. So they attempted to view a page. We see some of those pages are taking longer than others, and then we inform you of that issue in there. And that's a lot of how Nexthink works behind the scenes. We're not trying to force you to do a lot of this work. We want to do that work for you. So we take all that data that we get there, every application that's running and all the slowness and all the things that might happen in there, and then we interpret that and we provide you these kinds of results. And that's how we can do things about getting ahead of this. But as I mentioned, most of our organizations that we start working with are really in a kind of reactive mode. And so to help people in a more reactive state, we want to go to where they are, which might involve going into some place like a ServiceNow or a BMC or other kind of ITSM solution and interacting with them there. And the way that Nexthink integrates with those types of solutions is with a browser extension. So let's say that you're working on something within ServiceNow, and you're working on a ticket, and the customer has given you very vague understanding of what their issue is. My PC is running slowly. That's not something that you really can do a lot with. So you probably have to reach back out to them, ask them a lot of questions about the last time they rebooted. Can you try to reboot now? They may have just rebooted. Can you go and close some applications? And so you're going to go through basically a checklist of things that you might want to go through in there. What if we could do that without having to disturb the user as part of that? And that's where our Amplify browser extension comes in here. Because what we can do when we see that icon there and I click on it, it's going to read the ticket, understand the user and their device, and we can provide information about the static details about their device, but we can also provide information around how that device is performing right now. So for instance, in here, I could see that we've got our GPU usage, I've got CPU, I've got memory usage, I've got disk space, I've got details about how long it takes to log in. I have details around their compliance state, whether they've got the certificates that they need, whether they've got security. We could see that SCCM is not properly running or Mecca might not be properly running. So there is a variety of information that you could provide here. So if you think about what your technicians might need to collect on those level 1 calls, if the user doesn't give it to you, this is where Nexthink can come in and save you a significant amount of frustration and time when it comes to retrieving that data for you. And what we look at in here as well is we want to be able to guide a level 1 technician about how to use this. So using this kind of a traffic light system, I might look at something like this and say, well, we're really running low on free space in here. We could perform some automations on that one. Like I could run a disk cleanup. I could maybe get information around Outlook. If they have a large OST file, we might want to repair that OST file or reduce that OST file, seeing what's taking up all of the space on their device. And I can go and run these actions directly from here. And these are things that can be set up from a perspective of a role. So it's with role-based access control, you would define which technicians can perform those actions, but it can also empower them to do more than you might typically be empowering them to do today. So that's one thing that we can check on that might be impacting their slowness, but we can also see that their CPU usage was also quite high. And we could see from here, it's giving us some guidance about what we should do in here. So if we see something where that CPU usage was over 90%, following the guidance, we could see that anything more than 45% would be considered poor. And it's also suggesting what we should do in this scenario. We should review the applications that are consuming heavy CPU, see if there's too many browser tabs that are open. Maybe there's a correlation between the model that they're using or the age of that device and the CPU that it's taking up. So these are all factors that can go into why that device might be taking up those system resources. But you can go down and continue to scroll through this list in there to use this information that can get you more insight into what might be happening on that person's device. So ordinarily, I would have had to ask all these different questions of the user. They would have had to do that research. It would have delayed not only the resolution of the issue, but it would have also forced them to stop doing what they're doing to be able to get that information for me. Now, since we know that the CPU usage is high, but we don't know what applications are causing that, I might need to dig into this deeper. And for a lot of organizations, that level 1 team really does go beyond a level 1, where they might be a level 1.5. And they actually do try to get to some kind of a root cause, at least for that one device in there. And we have the utilities for that as well. So if I wanted to dig into this deeper, even if I needed to escalate that to level 2, or I wanted to handle that as my level 1 technicians, I can drill directly into that device here. And this is where we get a device timeline. And this is one of the most significant aspects of the way that we present information. So I'd mentioned that there's a ton of information that we're pulling in about the device, every application that's running and the resources that it's taking up and the network connections that it's making and all the applications that are running and whether there are issues with those. This all gets presented in a single view. So I could see at any given moment in time, let's say I really wanted to zoom in on an area. I could see if there were any application crashes or any kind of alerts. I could see if there was any kind of a CPU spike or a memory spike. I could see if we were running low on system drive free space. I could see if there were any GPU or NPU issues. I can see if our Wi-Fi was an issue, so if there were any kind of network problems. So what we're doing in here is we're differentiating. We can understand at this view, is it the device? Is it the application? Is it the network? And just that quick differentiation can really speed up that resolution process and increase the likelihood of resolving these tickets on the first call. Since the user had called in and said, my computer is running slow, I could see if they were calling, hey, we do see some Wi-Fi issues, but nothing really terrible. We could see what their signal strength was. So it's kind of in the yellow, maybe an issue. But I can see that we've got some bad Zoom calls, and those things are occurring at the same time that we see CPU spikes. And I can drill in and see what are the causes of those CPU spikes. And as I'd mentioned earlier, we can see that it's providing us some AI insights into those. So I could see in here, the device is showing that we've got heavy CPU usage. And it's also telling us why. So at this point, what it's going to tell us is it long-term? What else is it affecting in here? And what other applications might be causing that? So I don't expect level 1 technicians to interpret all of this data and to figure out what's happening, but presenting information like this in here is very useful. It's telling them right up front, Zoom is the issue right now. It's extremely high, and it could be due to some kind of video conferencing or other issues because it does know that it does have a call occurring at the same time. And what I can also do is look at the specific data that supports that analysis, where we could then see that the Zoom was taking up very high system resources. Now, if I wanted to understand why it was taking up so much CPU compared to the other applications, Nexthink also provides our cloud intelligence, which helps you understand and give context to the behavior of these applications. So if I wanted to understand why is Zoom, if I looked at the most common version that I have installed at my organization, I want to compare how often they crash. I want to compare the CPU usage. I want to compare the memory usage of different versions of Zoom. And you can do this for any application within Nexthink. So for instance, if you wanted to come up with a strategy about how often you upgraded or when it was appropriate to upgrade, you can use this to see what is the most stable version that's out there right now, not just in your organization, but across Nexthink customers so that you can get some insights about when it's appropriate to upgrade or to downgrade and what are the implications of doing that. So for instance, what I'm looking at right here, I could see that the most common version that I have installed has an average CPU usage of 35%. And that's not just my organization, that's for all organizations. So again, we're looking at demo data in here, but the idea behind this is you can see a very clear issue happening with this version, and we're using that data to make a clear recommendation. This is what you should do with this application to make it perform better. You might want to automatically upgrade those users to a new version. And Nexthink can handle that upgrade as well. So it can handle that upgrade. It could notify those users about those issues. Because one of the things that we might want to do here for those users is, number one, we want to tell them that you have an issue. And number two, we want to make that correction. And so one of the things that we can do is initiate a campaign. And what they would see if we did something like this, where we wanted to actually remove Zoom from their device and upgrade it, they're going to get a notification in the lower right-hand corner of their screen that's going to notify them that we need to upgrade Zoom. If you're using it right now, we can postpone that one till later. And so you could see that they get a notification like this, and they can then choose when they might want to receive that, or they could say, I want to do it now. So you can give those options, and then Nexthink will then perform this automation at the time that they've selected. So we've gone end to end there, where we saw that we had a user that provided us very weak information around what the issue was, but we had the information that provided us greater insight. We dug into that information, identified what the likely root cause was for that issue, and then we provided some kind of a resolution when we saw that that was an issue with Zoom, and then we reached out to the user to perform that fix. That's the typical way that support goes, but you could see how that goes much more efficiently now from what we've done. Now, what I also wanted to show you in here is another example of how Nexthink can handle these types of situations. And I want to show you that one with something that we refer to as Nexthink Spark, which is our agentic AI solution. Agentic AI is something that is designed to interact with a user on demand. So for instance, let's say I was trying to access a report in Power BI, and that was blocked for some reason, and I don't know why. And I need to go and look at that one. I could submit a ticket to the help desk, and they'll probably get back to me in an hour or so and figure this one out. I'm sure they'll get to it, but it'll take some time. It'll take a lot more resources. What if I could just do that on demand in here? Now, what's going to be significant about Nexthink Spark is it's going to have the context for me as a user. And so it understands right now that I was using Power BI. It has that real context about me and the applications that I use. And it does know that it's functioning for other users. I have access. So it's going through its own script to tell me it also sees that I'm working remotely, and it can run through different actions in here. So it might say, based off of what I know, this user is using Power BI, they're working remotely, they need to be connected to the VPN, so it understands my context because it understands my organization. You're able to seed Nexthink Spark with things like knowledge articles that really help Nexthink Spark understand how you operate. But even without that, Nexthink Spark is already trained on how to interpret Nexthink data, as well as how to solve a large variety of help desk issues. So anything that you might want help with, how do I uninstall an application? How do I access a certain file? Spark knows how to do that and it can guide you through those. But with something really sophisticated like this, it's offering me to go and fix my VPN right now because it's taken a chance at this. A lot of times, what you're going through with this support process is trying to go through a series of steps to see what we need to do. So if you have an issue where you can't access a report, there might be a variety of steps that it needs to check. Check the network, check the application, check other settings on your device. So it went through that, checked to see what we had gone through there, and that's how it was able to understand that I wasn't properly connected to the VPN. It went and made an adjustment to my profile, fixed that one, and I was now able to access Power BI. And so what we've gone through in here are two ways that we can help you be better at being reactive to different types of situations in your environment. So we often think of reactive as something that we want to avoid, but it's an important part of the way that we operate, and it's an important first step when it comes to providing a better user experience. But we can think of it not just in terms of being reactive of, well, we're going to make more tickets and we're going to force our users to submit all of our tickets and tell them what's wrong. We can provide them utilities like these and things that really almost create a white glove experience for your users and for your employees to really help fix a variety of issues before they become bigger things that are really disruptive to their experience in there. So with that, I appreciate the time. I know that was a lot of content to go over, and we really appreciate you all for joining here today. And I think with our last 3 minutes in here, we'll just give everybody a chance to kind of sum up in here and see how we want to handle what's going next. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, David. We do have about 2 minutes left. Any questions that anybody wants to toss up? Just as a reminder, we are recording the session, and I will get direct contact information to you for JB and David this morning as soon as I get the video uploaded, so to be able to reach out with any deeper dives or anything like that. But let me be quiet for a minute and see if anybody has anything to chat about for the remaining 2 minutes. Like to give a very pregnant pause. I'm always too quick with my words.
Still early.
It is. All right, folks, hearing no questions and seeing no questions in the chat, we are going to go ahead and wrap up. Thank you very much, JB and David, for joining us for this morning's session and for the incredible walkthrough. David, you did a great job. You got through a lot very, very quickly. I am envious of your time management. Very nice job this morning. Thank you to all of you who joined us and attended today's session. Please keep your eyes open for that follow-up email from me hitting your inbox shortly. I hope that everybody has a great rest of the day today and a safe holiday weekend. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend. Bye.
Bye.